Welcome to the Nephology podcast. I'm your host, Joe David, and I'm the founder and CEO of Nephos Group. On this podcast, we talk to founders, innovators, disruptors, and entrepreneurs from all across the globe who are building in Web3, technology, and finance. And if that's something that you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes. Now on to the next episode. Welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Nephology podcast. I'm really delighted to welcome Henry Burrows to the podcast today. Henry, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Thank
you for coming. We've known each other for quite a long time in this space.
Yeah, we have.
But this is the first time we've probably really sat down and gone deep in where you guys operate.
Yeah, I think it was like 7 or 8. It was a long time
ago.
Yeah,
it's a long time. Yeah. So I'm excited to, you guys are doing some really interesting stuff in this space. So I'm very much excited to have this conversation. So thank you for coming over. So for those that don't know who you are, maybe just give us a quick background on you and Hoptrail and what brings you kind of in this world today.
Yeah, so I run a company called Hoptrail. We're a crypto source of wealth analytics firm based in the UK, but we do a lot of work globally, Europe, UK, Singapore, other places. We started the business in late 21, and the genesis, and I might have told you this before, but the genesis of the business was just an issue. I personally had experience in 2018 or 2019. I was trying to buy a house in the UK.
Okay, yeah.
And I had some crypto. I was quite pleased about it because, didn't have that much money except this crypto. And I wanted to use it for a house and went to the solicitors. It was like a regional solicitors in the East Midlands, right? So, they said source of funds. I said, crypto. She just had a meltdown.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is going to be a problem for me, and it's probably going to be a problem for like other people, other young people, first-time buyers trying to get on a housing ladder and all that kind of stuff. And I worked in business intelligence, so like due diligence for banks and stuff, but traditional DD. So I just kind of took that philosophy, that approach, and said, I'll use the underlying data set as the blockchain and build a report for the solicitor. So it was like the first source of wealth report that I ever did.
It was for yourself, effectively.
Yeah. Got the house, which...
so they accepted it and everything?
Yeah. My wife was very happy. It was all good. And then I started doing it, for a few friends and just kind of helping out. And then a law firm in the city, who I was actually in their offices this morning because we still work together, asked if we could do it for their private client book. And that's when it kind of got started. So we raised a bit of money in 21 or early 22, set up the business and got going, trying to build some proper source of wealth tools and do it in the best way we possibly could to help everybody who had crypto wealth.
And I guess at the start, because you do obviously a lot more than just source of wealth stuff now, but that was the starting point. It was very much around source of wealth reports for people that wanted financing of some kind. I guess typically was property purchases, but it could have been other sources of financing.
Definitely. We still do a lot of property stuff, and I think I always will, because it's great to get people on the housing ladder. It's so hard to buy a house in the UK, and it's nice to be able to allow people to use those proceeds. I think back in the day, 2017, 2018, people were like, what's the use case is going to be for crypto? And I think the property market was one that I thought would kind of, kind of come to fruition. And it did to a certain extent. And we always still do that work. But now it's much broader. I mean, working for large private banks globally on, super wealthy people, complex source of wealth cases, but a bunch of other investigations and weird and wonderful stuff.
Which we just get.
Yeah, exactly. We'll come on to that.
And so you work then for the banks direct, or do you work for the let's say I'm a high net worth individual and I'm going to a private bank and I've got crypto. Does the bank engage you to do it, or does the bank say you Mr. High Net Worth, you need to speak to Hoptrail to?
Yeah, so the property stuff we just do direct for the clients most of the time, because it's like a one-off. The property purchase. Here's a report. Usually in concert with the solicitor, because solicitors look, you need to go to Hoptrail to get these reports. Yeah. So that's kind of every party's kind of aligned there. But other than that, we typically commissioned by the bank.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason is just because sometimes people will go to the bank and with a report of ours. If that happens, the bank may not be able to kind of then come back to us to kind of ask for an independent review.
Okay.
So it's always better for the bank to commission it direct, and that's kind of the way we've been working for the last 2-3 years. It's better because then it's completely independent. In some cases, we just don't even know who the end client is.
They just give you the addresses or
we
whatever.
just have the on-chain data or the crypto data, and we go ahead, and it saves a lot of headaches. Client confidentiality and all that kind of stuff. It solves a lot of that. And we just work on the on-chain data.
And actually, like you say, there's also there's no bias there. You don't know who it is, so you can't be swayed by human opinion or whatever, which, you can be. And I always think that with compliance functions in banks and stuff is they must sometimes have a bit of a bias, or they know that person and therefore they don't like them, and therefore, they don't agree with this, or they don't, the Farage thing with his bank and stuff. And
I completely agree. And I think if you're in a bank, you're working in compliance in a bank, you will know their nationality, their sort of public footprint and profile, their name. Obviously, you'll have much more sort of personal identifiers about that person. You can make a judgment. You will naturally judge them before you've even done due diligence. So what's good about the work that we do is we have none of that. We just look at the blockchain data, and we just kind of make the assessment, the financial crime risks on the blockchain and on the exchanges, and how the wealth was made.
So it's a fact-based approach.
Yeah, it's as fact-based as you can get it, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always things in the data where you're like, oh, this guy's clearly, a founder of X, Y, and Z, or he's a big investor in this token. But it's about as impartial as you can get it, and that's the way we like to keep it.
And how much is it? Without giving away the secret sauce, I guess. But how much is individuals needing to do the work versus and analyze data that's come out versus an automated report that just fires off the production line? Yeah,
that's an interesting question, because I think our world is moving. It's data, right?
Yeah.
So it's underpinning everything that we do is data, so it's very easily automatable. I think the difficulty is the translation from the data to the outcomes.
What it means.
So what does it mean? Yeah, exactly. Like, all of this information is great. You can say that money came from here. They made this amount. They then moved it to this service. But what does all of that mean? Are there any financial crime risks attached to any of that stuff? Like, is the money making story legit? There's a whole bunch of kind of slightly more esoteric questions that you won't necessarily be able to answer just through the automated source of wealth process. I think we as a business do have a platform, and you can plug in wallets and stick in all the data from exchanges and then create a report. And that report is designed to be nice and easy to read. And if it's relatively simple, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or something like that, that might just get you what you need.
Yeah.
Like, that's it, and that's great. And that might be 60-70% of the cases.
Yeah.
But then you get the complex ones where there are things that have occurred where it's just not possible to explain through the data alone. So the context and the nuance and the weird idiosyncrasies you've got in the data, human input needs to be done to say, okay, this is what it means. So a lot of what our team does, the expertise and sort of knowledge that we've gathered over the years, is to kind of set the scene on that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of compliance officers at banks are not crypto experts.
Absolutely, yeah.
But they're having to deal with it because there's an opportunity, or there's a particular case where they're really pushing, or a client, and so they have to get their heads around it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing is, going back to the property thing, is you could kind of automate some of that, because it's a nice way. Conveyancers don't overly care as long as they've got a report there to be able to, to back up. I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, it's a transactional business, right? It's very much around how do we get the transaction done, and are we able to satisfy ourselves that the funds are legitimate, and if they can get a report from a professional that says it is, 9 times out of 10, that's pretty much as far as they need to go in order to verify. So I think that side, like you say, is where that can be much more automated and out the box in inverted commas. But some of the other stuff is
definitely. But I also think, like, a lot of the questions we get are, you just don't expect. Some people still don't know what Coinbase is, right? They're like, what's Binance?
Wow.
What's the difference between, what's a decentralized exchange? What's the difference between Uniswap and SushiSwap, or are any of these things registered? You do get a lot of these compliancy questions that you think actually the broader context about the legitimacy of this exchange, or we always get clients who have used FTX. All the people other people who have heard about FTX is only in the context of its collapse and the whole fallout, and Sam Bankman-Fried getting jailed in the US, and they immediately sort of attribute a potential red flag to that. They're just customers of the exchange by and large, and there's nothing really wrong with the deposits, withdrawals, buys or sells, whatever they've done on that exchange. It's just you then have to ensure that you're contextualizing it, because a lot of these cases get read, or the reports get read by people in banks who are not really too sure about crypto, and they're obviously sometimes they're quite skeptical as well anyway.
They're skeptical of the industry in general, and therefore people that are in it.
I think the barrier to that is a little bit higher. We do we have a platform called the Rabbit Hole, which is like counterparty intelligence. So if you want to find out the history of Coinbase, reputational history, the licensing, integrity, all the criminal issues it may have had, or litigation, it's all there.
Right.
And we kind of started to combine all of those off-chain elements into the on-chain data, so that people go, well, but what is Bittrex? And then you have to explain, and then it's easy to drop all that stuff in.
And where I guess we're coming back to this point around the skepticism of people. I guess you've kind of really therefore built the three pillars, haven't you? So you've got the productized tool where people can go and generate a report. You've got the bespoke wealth reporting stuff, and then you've got the Rabbit Hole where people can then go and do the counterparty stuff. So I guess, was that just born out of a bit like your housing problem created the source of wealth side, and then you start to get questions on other bits, and you just built these product stack to facilitate?
Yeah, definitely. Me and my CTO is always like, we need to speak to the clients and customers about what they want and stuff. And I think it just naturally happened anyway in the beginning, because you did something, well, for me in the first place, and then for others who wanted that. And that was a kind of a feedback loop that we got, that we were doing the right thing. And then those questions started to appear about the counterparties. And so we started to factor that in. And obviously the automation stuff naturally happens. The one thing we did at the beginning was say, we tested a whole bunch of blockchain analytics platforms, and we're like, right, these are great if you're the FBI, if you want to do some like crazy tracing, investigations, or it's good if you're Binance, you just want a transaction monitoring tool like an API endpoint, and there's nothing in the middle for source of funds for banks. So we ended up, we'll build it ourselves. We'll also build our own data sets, like our own attribution data sets, and do it properly ourselves. There's no third parties being plugged in. What's great about that is we have complete and full understanding of our workflows. And also the technical, what underpins the algorithms, the heuristics, like the data capture, indexing, running the nodes on the blockchains. So it really helps us to then use our expertise in other ways if we need to. There's like complex issues that people are trying to unpick. Would naturally, generally speaking, have that knowledge in house anyway.
That's good.
Great.
That's good. And so obviously we talked a lot about like source of wealth and stuff, but what does a source of wealth report mean? Like, what does it contain? Like, what is it?
They're always different. And that's, I think, part of the challenge of automation, and I think that's not an insurmountable problem. But like, I'll give you a couple of example. Well, what is it? I mean, effectively, the reports are answering like four things. One is, where did the money come from? Who are the counterparties? How did they make that money? And what are the risks? So those four questions, generally speaking, are answered in those reports. And if you can answer those, you have a pretty good report by and large. I think where did the money come from is critical, source of funds, and obviously the risk is like any financial crime touch points. There's a whole world of discussion around like what a red flag is and all that kind of stuff. But that's generally what it is.
And sorry to jump in, you touched on the red flag thing there, and I've seen this myself, and I've used different tools, and different people have different red flags, and all those sorts of things. Do you generate your own kind of red flags? You generate your own kind of methodology around what's high risk, what's low risk, etc., or do you use others? Do you use a combination? How do you do that typically?
Yeah, we've looked at various other, again, like traffic light systems, numbers 1 to 100, and we tested other systems. We found that by and large you could sort of manipulate these scores if you wanted to. We wanted just to apply something that was sensible and defensible, and so by and large, and I'm like really simplifying what we do here, but by and large, if you've got a dark web marketplace, that's high risk.
Yeah.
If it's sanctions, it's critical. If it's an exchange, it's low risk.
Yeah.
Legitimate versus illegitimate services is the kind of broad distinction that we apply, and then where there is a risk, we then isolate that high risk transaction and allow our customers to review them and take a look at what, the amounts, values, timings, proximity, is it direct or indirect, because we do multi-hop as well.
Yeah.
So all of those factors come into play, and we do that because I'm not convinced that applying a score to a wallet is always the best approach.
Yeah.
Like for a start, what does 60 mean? Like,
I agree.
What does 40 mean? Like, what's your tolerance there? What are the underlying characteristics of the scoring? And it gets quite complicated to figure out and explain. But if you're just saying, look, here's a high risk, but here's a mitigating factor, then everyone's kind of happy. And I think that's why we are so good at what we do, is because we don't try to sort of
like pigeonhole it.
Yeah. Don't try and simplify it too much. And I think the key thing is obviously just identifying the risk.
Yeah, and I've had that with my own wallet. I say my own wallet. Obviously, I've got multiple wallets. I've got one particular wallet that's kind of been used for all my degen-y, trying stuff out, And so if I put that through some of the tools, it comes up as like quite high risk, because I've gone into like millions of different things and I've done loads of little transactions, and I've probably touched stuff that now doesn't exist anymore, and probably have touch mixers on it and stuff like that, because I've tried it out. So I very much use it for that. But I'm in one, I would say this, but I'm not high risk. Like and that wallet isn't really high risk. It's just a messy wallet that I use to. Yeah. So in that context, like you say, I would be deemed to be high risk based on a score of 80 or whatever. Yeah. But what does that really mean in reality? Whereas what people really need to understand is the context behind that.
I completely agree. And I think a lot of people get caught out because crypto investors by and large are tech savvy, intellectually curious. Yeah. They want to try out new things and test new protocols. And that includes back in the day like Tornado Cash and other things. And if you run your wallet and you just see like the exposure to Tornado Cash and the red flag is like, high risk, you're going to have problems. And there's often there's very few avenues to kind of say, okay, yes, I can see that, but here's the additional information or context to explain why I did that. Yeah. And it wasn't during a time when it was sanctioned or anything. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of things around there which I think for us means that the bespoke reporting will always be a really important product, because you mentioned Nigel Farage, like a lot of our clients get debanked because the bank, by and large, I'm generalizing a little bit here, but they'll ask a question, where did this come from? They say crypto, and then they start explaining how they were mining back in 2011 and they did all this stuff, and the bank's like, oh my god, this is going to cost.
That is a typical crypto thing, is we overshare, not because for any reason other than we think that we're justifying our existence, when actually in reality we're scaring the other person.
I know,
but actually what we're trying to be like, I've been in this for a while, I used to do mining and I've done this, and then they go, whoa, hang on a second.
They're like, look, this is really cool, and the compliance guy at the bank's like freaking out. And I've had a lot of clients who have been debanked, and we've had to go away, build a report and explain it. And one of the key things of our report is largely it's just plain English. Like you need every portfolio, your DGEM wallet, it would just be there'd be a narrative to it, a start and a finish, and an explanation, chronological retelling of what happened, and that's all we do. And it's really important to be able to kind of do that. And I don't think the data, if you just chuck in the wallet addresses and you get the numbers, I think people get really intimidated by that. I think a lot of not everybody's like super good at maths and savvy with numbers, and they'll look at that data and then they'll start to panic, and they'll then see a potential red flag 3 hops away, and it escalates. So I think that's the challenge that we have is to sort of solve that particular area.
And like you say, you've then got the balance, right, between those that just want to tick a box. They want transaction. They're an exchange. They need transaction monitoring, so they just need a tool that transaction monitors. They don't. I say they don't overly care, but you get my point, right?
Yeah.
They're, again, generalizing, but they really what they're trying to do is tick a box. Obviously, if they get an alert that it's they'll do something, blah 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 blah. And then on the other side of that, you've got people that really want to know every single detail. So you've got to kind of get in the middle of like, you know, I'm completely against crypto over here versus I just tick a box. And in the middle, those ones that need real bespoke kind of work. And, the other thing on Tornado Cash, an example, I said this to one of our team actually a few years ago, and they were like, oh, this client's been doing loads of stuff on Tornado Cash or whatever it was. And I was like, just because they want to be private doesn't make them a criminal.
Yeah.
And like that is the assumption, right? Is that if you use a privacy-based tool, you are a criminal, right? Yeah. And it's like, actually, maybe they just want to be private.
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't want everyone knowing what they're doing. So not saying that obviously there's a lot of people that use the privacy stuff for illegitimate purposes, but I think that's the other thing is a lot of these tools just blanket everyone with the same answer.
Yeah.
And they don't look at the wider picture.
And I also think, I'm doing a case that involves Monero at the minute, and you're going through what Monero is about. You set the scene. I mean, a lot of it is about setting the scene because the reader, the reader's going to be asking questions about Monero and what it is and why it exists. And it's a privacy and security focused tool to remain anonymous on chain or to retain your privacy on chain. And there is a good use case for that. And I think that, over the last few years, Monero has just, amongst traditional financial institutions, got a very bad name because it's been associated with bad actors who have used it. And it's not always the case. I mean, bad actors use cash, right?
Exactly.
So you just have to be aware that, like, it's not black and white.
But then to be fair, sorry to jump in again, to be fair, cash has also now got a bad rep. In a sense, right?
Yeah.
And this is the thing.
I mean, I don't even touch cash.
People
anymore.
just generalize. People just go, you can't go into a bank now and withdraw cash without being given the third degree because all of a sudden they think you're a criminal. Yeah. And that's the thing. People just immediately go, he's doing this, he must be this.
Yeah.
Whereas what we need is what you're doing, which is to say, let's bring a bit more context to the table. And
there's there's so much to talk about there, and I think the challenge is the other challenge is that with crypto you have the ability to see so much, right? With cash you just don't know. Source funds, like I don't know. That ATM. Yeah. But with Bitcoin or any crypto, by and large, you can trace it back all the way, and that's the danger is that once people know that and they don't fully understand the consequences of asking for those things, you're going to go 10-20 hops away, and especially old school Bitcoin transactions, you're going to hit Silk Road at some point, and then people start to freak out. And I think that's part of the education we do with our banking clients, is just kind of talk through these problems all the time. The other thing is, like, in recent years, the velocity of money making is like extreme.
Yes.
And that is unusual in most asset classes, but it's not necessarily unusual in crypto. And I think that is also a challenge or a hurdle that people are getting their heads around. How did this person make so much money so quickly? Yeah,
and that is we see that with HMRC.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They don't believe, that it's just this or it's just that. And we've got a case that we're kind of battling, if you like, with HMRC at the moment, where they're basically saying this guy is clearly, the money that this guy's made in the period he's made it, he's clearly a sophisticated trader. He should pay income tax on everything because he's clearly sophisticated. Obviously, I'm summarizing. And we're kind of like, do you know what? We actually just got lucky on some random meme coin. Yeah. And they're like, there's just no way that happened. I'm like, it did. Like it actually did. And and that is the world. It is such a crazy world in that sense.
It is. It's mad. We have some slides in our presentation that we do to banks, and it's about how young people, especially the 24-25 bull run for Solana, they leverage social media and other trading bots and monitors to get into positions first. So
100%,
a guy we had one client who was basically an unemployed student, and he had like $9 million in his wallet, and he started with about 1,000, maybe 11 months before, or even less than that. But we ended up going transaction by transaction, seeing how he'd done it. And yeah, a lot of luck, 100%. Like, there's a lot of luck there. But he hit 2 or 3 big positions and it just went nuts. And it was timed in correlation almost entirely with massive bull runs in Solana and certain coins on Solana right the way through to the end of 24, early 25 with Trump coin.
Yeah.
And bang, he was out. And it was all legit, but the level of explanation you had to go to get there, to get people comfortable with it is insane. And I think that's part of the challenge. It's good fun. I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah,
it's really cool because, like, this guy hasn't got a job. He's like at uni. What's he doing?
Yeah. We had an Amazon kid in Blackburn. Amazon, when you order and they a picker. Like, earning 15 grand a year and then earn £1 million in crypto.
Yeah.
It looks insane, right? It just, fair play to these people. And actually, this guy was quite early on it was like 21 maybe.
Yeah.
So he wanted to get, and again, this was the other thing. He wanted to legitimize what he'd made, right? He wanted to go, I want to declare this. I know the rules aren't really there, but I just want to declare it and get it out there. And, and then HMRC look at him and question him. And you're like, the poor kid's trying to do the right thing here.
They're prejudging him.
Yeah. So it's
massively unfair.
It is very, very difficult. I think they've got better, actually, HMRC. I do think they've got better at understanding crypto. But that was going to be one of my questions as well. Is have you ever dealt with a tax case, if you like, or a case where HMRC are like, I say don't believe this or we don't believe that, and some of your work has then been able to support that? Or
I believe yes, we have actually done a few cases directly related to tax queries from HMRC or pushback where they've gone, well, we don't believe it, and they've gone away and commissioned a report from us, and it's usually through law firms that we know. And it's usually just because stuff is quite complicated. If you have been in crypto for any length of time, you're not necessarily just going to sit tight on Bitcoin or Ethereum. You're going to get curious, especially 2017, 2021, 24, 25 maybe. You're like, oh, let's try that. And suddenly, if you ever look back at your crypto activity, it's quite widespread. It's difficult to explain.
Sporadic,
I've looked at some of my transactions recently. I'm like, actually, I went through it with my accountant recently. I was like, I don't remember that. I can't, I don't know what that is. And you really have to think about it.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
And part of that challenge is that, I guess you just there's so much data that gets produced.
100%
by your trading data.
100, and I actually started a Telegram chat with myself where I basically when I made payments or whatever in crypto, so that I knew what it was for. So I'd put the transaction hash in the chat with myself,
right,
and I'd write, this was paying X invoice or whatever. Because I like you, I would look back at it and I'd be like, I just sent a random amount of money from my wallet to a random string of numbers and letters.
Yeah.
There's no context. There's and obviously, business owners, we've got a lot going on. I'm like, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
So that even if you think you will remember, or you think, oh, I'm, not even smart, but you know what I mean? Like,
completely.
It's so hard.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I can, that's also something, like you say, that is super important. Just I want to touch on the banks side of things. So obviously you work now with the banks themselves. Was this a conscious kind of BD effort from you to go, right, we need to get into these banks because they need us? Or was it the kind of banks reaching out to you, say? And then the second part of that is, have you been surprised, or have you, and you obviously no names, but there's a bank that's come along and has asked you to produce some stuff and you're like, can't believe you haven't looked at this, or where's that? Because that must be an interesting field.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd started a company with a conscious decision to go and work for banks, to be honest. I just thought it was quite an exciting experiment to try and help people out and see what happened. But quite early on, we onboarded a very well-known private bank in London, and because they had a few cases, started to work for them, and that was interesting. And then shortly after that, end of 22, we were approached as an RFP with a huge global bank. And at the time I was like, well, we'll fill in the details, but there's absolutely no way we'll get through this because, we don't have half of what they want.
Yeah.
It's like 130 questions. And we filled it in, and we went through the process, and we just kept on going. And I think part of it is that when we started to speak to them about what we do and how we do it, they realised that there was a real need in the bank for that. Because I think the RFP started by saying we probably just need chain analysis. Like we just want a transaction monitoring tool of some kind. But then they realised that actually, massive global private bank, they've got wealthy customers.
Yes,
So that took a long time. I was comparing it to the Odyssey.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I know. Well, I know about it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
I'm going this weekend.
Oh, nice.
But anyway, we finalised that earlier this year, and in between that period, we onboarded a lot of other banks, and more recently some other big ones where it's just the service that we provide. There's a massive commercial need in these banks at some point. So a lot of it is just going out there and talking about what we do and how we do it.
And are you surprised they don't have it in-house, or are you not surprised because it is such a technical area that actually this is one of those things that you are probably better off?
I'm not surprised. I think that source of wealth analytics is quite hard. I think that it requires specific expertise, and just because of what I've done over the last 6-7 years, have that knowledge and expertise. And same with my team and Pete as well, who's our CTO, who's just got enormous amount of know-how and knowledge. You do get some sort of vendors out there who take a subscription to a blockchain analytics platform and then try and market their services to do that.
Yeah, okay.
And I've seen some of those outputs, and that is just big risks. Like all over, the analysis is all over the place. It's incomplete. It's not very clear. And I think that the banks eventually realise that and then come to someone like us to fill that hole.
No, that makes sense. And we've done it for where we've got tax clients, where we've actually because we are, as a firm, we are not just saying put your report through put your data through a Coinly or similar and send us the report and we'll file it. That's not we say give us the wallets, we'll put them on Coinly, say, and we will go and bookkeep effectively. We'll reconcile everything. We'll understand the transactions. We'll understand what you're doing. So we can actually, especially if we've done it from the start, which we did. We do. Now we're doing more of the ongoing stuff, but in 21, 22, 23, we were doing a lot of stuff where people come and went, I've been in it since 2017. I need you to go back to 2017 to complete the puzzle. So we were able to then do a basic, if someone's buying a house, say, look, from our perspective as the tax advisors, we've gone through the transaction history. As far as we're aware, it all looks legit, blah, 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 blah. Here's the tax returns. We can run a couple of, not chain analysis, but those sorts of, here's a couple of wallet reports. It's up to you, Mr. Solicitor.
But do you have obligation to kind of check some of these things out nowadays, or because I know that the sort of regulator or the bodies that oversee accounting in the UK have sort of put out guidelines about wallet screening, stuff like that. Yeah,
so it's a difficult one. We've had this conversation internally because we don't need transaction monitoring, right?
Yeah,
because we're not handling finances, we're not moving money or whatever. So it is a little bit of a difficult one, because if we're in the traditional finance world, we don't have to ask them for different banking bits, and we just need, let's say we're doing their property, they've got property rental, and we just we only really need that. We don't ask their personal bank statements. We just ask for say they've got a separate account for it or whatever. So it's it is difficult, because it does seem sometimes there's one rule for one and one rule for the other. So we try and do some basic stuff more on a perspective. Two sides. One, if we're getting paid by somebody in crypto, we will usually try and do a check on the wallet they're going to send it from before we get paid, just to make sure that there's nothing crazy. And then secondly, if we've got a client that feels a bit more high risk, maybe in their whole infrastructure is a little bit more, I don't know, they've got a BVI company and I don't know, a director in Seychelles or I don't know, something like that, right? Then we would maybe do a bit more kind of checks just to make sure that we're comfortable. We have an AML obligation, obviously, as a firm, so that's also the other side is we have to be comfortable with the client that we've got.
You say doing those KYC checks?
Yes, exactly. So we do a little bit on that side, but remember as well, we're an accounting firm that knows crypto, right? How many accounting firms out there that say they know crypto? And I'm not criticizing, but say they know crypto but don't. they're not doing any of that stuff.
No.
So there's a lot of that, it's a very grey area, I think, around what we're supposed to do and not supposed to do, because we're not handling their finances, as in the actual financial transactions.
That's it. And that you can, because it's all public though, there's a temptation, we go back to what we were saying earlier, like there's a temptation to just kind of like, look at the entire ecosystem way beyond the specific thing you need to do, or whatever it might be. I mean, we've had clients who, 300-400 wallets, 6-7 different chains over a long period of time, and it's all solvable. But it's like, okay, at what point do you kind of draw the line on this, or sort of stop there? Because you could go off on massive tangents.
You could just keep going and going and going, like you say. And the other thing I just wanted to say as well on that piece is, I think what people need to understand like you say, we talk about the hops, right, which is obviously wallet to wallet effectively, so the movement of transactions. If I am in my banking situation, if I've got a bank account and I send you money, and then you send the money to Amy, and then Amy sends it to a Russian sanctioned individual. Yeah. No, to be honest, nobody would ever look that far.
No.
In reality, right? No. They'd look here. They might look here, depending on what's going on. But they're not going to go there. But in crypto, and part of that's because it's more difficult to do so. In crypto, it's very easy.
Yeah.
So how do you, like, because again, we talk about bias. How do you then bring them back and go?
Well, if you send money to Coinbase, it then sends money to Binance, that then sends money to, and I'm not picking on Binance, an Iranian national or something, you wouldn't necessarily know about it if you're doing a source of wealth case on the originator, because you might have their Coinbase account, but you wouldn't have the other guy's Binance account. So there's a centralized exchange venues that may kind of act similar in the bank to the banks in that situation. But then obviously you've got self-custody. It's like a whole new sort of environment where you can, full transparency on money movements. So from my ledger to yours, and then onto Amy's MetaMask, and then to a Russian, is possible to see all of those things very easily on the blockchain. And that's the temptation, is that, well, it's good that we can see that, and I think the transparency is really useful. And in fact, weirdly, I don't think a lot of people know that there's that much transparency in crypto. I think there's a lot of misperception about it being 100% anonymous.
Well, we had, sorry again, I keep jumping in, but
that's all right.
We had so in, I don't even know what it was, 2022 maybe, we were looking at a wealth management mortgages kind of product, and we had a network that sat in the middle, if you like, between, like a kind of, you then become an appointed representative of the network. And the network said to us, we can't provide you with the services you want because you service the crypto industry, and the crypto industry cannot be audited. That's what that like, we can't see the transactions.
Wow.
And I was just like, I basically wrote back and was like, I don't want to work with you anyway, to be honest, because if that's really what you think, if that is your legal response,
where do you even start?
Yeah, like, you've just got no idea, have you? But this is one of the biggest networks that provide authorized representative relationship. I mean, this was 2022, but in the wealth management kind of space, like, that is also worrying. That
I mean, we've had a few cases where we've uncovered major red flags, like just absolute deal killers, and it's only because of the blockchain that we could have done that. It wasn't necessarily even that the red flag was in a direct chain back; it was adjacent to, but you can still. And there's a whole bunch of things that we were able to piece together to tell the client, look, there are major issues there that you would never have seen if you just looked at the money, coming in and money going out. So I think there's so much. I always say to my clients that the blockchain is super powerful as a compliance tool. Yeah. And it's a big ally for compliance teams in banks to be able to leverage that to find out what people have been doing and where their money comes from. And once you know that and get your head around it, you can actually get to grips with some of these weird and wonderful cases that we've been discussing, where you can probably onboard a large segment of previously what you thought were unbankable people 100%. With a lot of money.
100%.
There's so much wealth out there that's really trapped in crypto because of that perception that they can't bank it. Yeah. So firms like ours and yours as well are acting as the bridge there to enable them to access this wealth, and it's from my perspective, it's very exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And I guess just on the kind of, finishing on that auditability point, but also, on the kind of new age we've got. Have you done much now in the kind of prediction market space and the poly markets? And we've just taken on a client from a lawyer who's done 3-4 million transactions on poly market and made some very good money. And we're going to have to do quite a lot of work.
That's an interesting one.
But it's all on chain again.
Yeah,
it's all on chain transactions, but it's a very different market to your traditional kind of buy sell or move money. So that's another area.
Well, I the questions that immediately pop into my mind when you talk about that is how have they done that? So they have put positions in various markets on Polymarket or whatever it is, and they've made money. So do they have any material like non-public information or inside information that would allow them to benefit from these positions that the rest of the market doesn't? It's a bit like we haven't done that much in prediction markets, but we've actually done quite a lot in the perps, like on-chain perpetuals world, and that's nuts and we've done a lot of high frequency traders too, because we big data and we analyze that. But when somebody makes a lot of money on a specific trade and it's low initial investments, a massive cashing out, and it's a month or so, a 2-month time frame, the immediate questions are how did they get in, so how did they time that so well? And it's the same with the prediction markets. Yeah. And a lot of it is, I had like 50 other trades that were unsuccessful, and I got lucky with this one. But the other explanations are not necessarily on-chain, but about the subject's trading strategy and approach and technical sort of ability to set up social media monitors. I had a client who was basically monitoring Donald Trump's social media, and when he launched Trump Coin, he was in at the beginning, right at the very start, and then got out later that day. So a lot of the explanation of how they made their money comes from outside of the blockchain world. So there's an element there where your on and off-chain research has to combine to make clear the explanation. I'm sure it will probably be the same in the prediction markets.
Yeah, 100%, because I think it was Donald Trump's teleprompter.
Oh yeah,
the person, not the machine. That was then he used the prediction markets, I think, to bet on things that Trump would say. Because he knew what he was going to say, because he was the teleprompter.
I saw that.
And obviously we're in that world now with prediction markets where you can kind of bet on anything. And that is where then I guess that kind of then is the question answered, which is are you then using the qualitative data as not just the quantitative data? Because again, just looking at the numbers, flipping the question from earlier where it was like, oh, the numbers look stupid, it can't be right. Here you could be like, well, he's just traded loads. Oh, he's done well, great. Whereas actually when you look at the underlying and you go, hang on a second.
I think you do have to look at the catalyst for some of those things, and you have to understand that's where what is useful is, back in the day we were doing due diligence transaction for banks on deals, right? So we'd be doing a deal, DD on a deal where we'd looking at an Indian real estate tycoon, and you couldn't just you couldn't just call him up and say, hey, what's this transaction? But in our world, the banks obviously say, well, just speak to the guy and find out what happened, like what was the strategy. And it's really useful to be able to do that, to say, okay, get the narrative about how they made their money and what triggers they used in order to do that, because a lot of it is just tech. It's just really clever use of trading strategy and technical know-how to be able to get ahead of the market.
100%. One of our clients done very well for himself. He has he basically trades off Twitter news, and he has a few subscriptions where he kind of gets the news seconds before the market. He trades on Binance and Bybit mainly, and he literally does his whole thing on his phone. He'll get the news come through. As soon as it comes through, if it's a trade worth taking in whatever context it is, he'll go and look for that and make that trade. And I've said to him, I remember earlier when we started working with him, I was like, oh, tell me when you come up with something like this. But even by the time he'd sent me a message, it was too late. You've missed that's how quick these people are.
definitely. There was one case I always think about. CZ, you know, the Binance guy, CZ. He was going to launch a token that was named after his dog.
Oh, yeah.
Does it tell
you like broccoli or something?
Broccoli, yeah. And so he's like, get ready for this, guys, on social media. And as soon as so one of my clients was set up a trading bot to basically sort of wait for keywords and then buy. So as soon as CZ announced that his dog was called Broccoli and the token they were going to launch called Broccoli, or they just launched it, the trading bot picked up the keyword dog that is broccoli and then started buying every token across 4 or 5 different chains, $10,000 each, of anything that had the word broccoli in it. Now that one of those, I don't know, 15 tokens
was gonna
massive returns. And it's just so strange explaining that to someone how they've done that. It's like, that's actually really cool, but just so different to, I don't know, stocks or shares or bonds or like real estate.
Especially when you're talking to a private bank. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, you know, how did you make your money? Wow, I've just bought a load of coins called broccoli for some random Chinese guy.
Yeah, it's just staking aggregate tokens on Pancake Swap, by the way. It's like, okay,
it's just,
what is that?
It's just insane.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I want to touch on something more interesting. We had a brief chat about this off camera, but now bring it kind of on camera. And you know, this is where the world, I guess, for you is, I guess, developed, but also moved away from just that source of wealth type thing where you're just producing a report for someone, and where you actually kind of presented to Parliament on the IRGC and Iranian activity. And I actually did a very brief article when the war kind of first started kicking off, and they closed the Strait of Hormuz, and they were talking about accepting Bitcoin and you know, stable coins as payment methods, as you know, for the tolls that they were going to impose on the and my kind of thing was there, you know, sometimes people do, you know, obviously in this case it was an extreme, but you know, sometimes people do need to find ways to transact that is outside of the traditional system, because for whatever reason they can't operate within that. So I mean, that's a fascinating thing, I guess, first of all, to have worked on, but maybe talk a little bit about how that worked.
Yeah, we as I said to you, you know, we curate our own database. We have hundreds of millions of tagged wallets across multiple chains. And because of who we work with and what we do and how we do it, we get some really fascinating data sets. We just come across them. I personally spend a lot of my time, you know, you can ask my wife at the weekends, just like digging up stuff about, you know, interesting parts of the crypto space, including the sort of slightly shady world of sanctions and bad actors and Iran and North Korea. And we were asked to take a look at Iran's activity in the UK from a crypto perspective, and to find out more about what they were doing and how they were doing it, and their sort of malign influence in the UK. And this was off the back of the sort of closure of two registered exchanges that were operating in the UK called ZSEX was the exchange. ZZion is kind of the term for the wider ecosystem that was run by an Iranian guy, Companies House registered, you know, fake profiles for the director. Well, one of the directors was a fake profile, but operating, you know, seemingly normally until recently, until the start of this year when everything sort of the war kicked off. And then Companies House closed it down, but it opened up a whole can of worms about what Iran was actually doing. Yeah, we just happened to have a lot of data around IRGC, and so we started to sort of do some digging. And what we found was really fascinating, because there's two elements to Iranian activity in the UK. There's one is sort of the retail remittance, the Iranian diaspora using exchanges to send money back, but largely it's kind of OTC brokers and sort of money desks, or you go up. A lot of them in London as well, where you can just sort of send USDT back to Iran. And there's a lot of flows there that I think possibly being leveraged by bad actors. But the other part to it, the more sort of sinister part to it, was this ZSEX ecosystem, the trading that was happening. And what we noticed was that the start of this year, the US government sanctioned 7 or 8 wallets tied to the exchange. I can't remember exactly the number. I think it was 7. And when you look at those wallets and the money flows between them, essentially what happens is every time, and then we correlated that with military activity. So every time there was a spike in, missiles launched at Israel, or the 12-day war that happened during this year, or various activity that happened with the US, military activity would spike dramatically, and flows into ZSEX, this exchange in the UK, would spike massively, like tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, we weren't sure what they were doing with that, but it could be, a number of different. It could be payment for procurement for various bits of hardware and things like that. It could just be skirting sanctions, moving money around the international financial system without hitting the SWIFT system. But by and large, you're kind of assuming that it's going to be something related to that. And it was really interesting to see that total correlation until the UK shut it down and the US started to sanction some of these actors. So we took that there's a whole report that we published about it, and we took it to Parliament a couple of weeks ago. And what was really interesting is that the recommendations, and top recommendation was that IRGC should be sanctioned by the UK government. And as I was queuing to get into Parliament, actually, the government announced that they'd sanctioned it. And
so that was before you'd even walked in the door.
About an hour beforehand, yeah. And they'd announced that they had. I think there's a difference between prescribed and sanctioned, and they haven't fully prescribed.
Yeah, they've now prescribed them as terrorists, I think.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the terminology. It's not full-blown sanctions, though. It's like one step towards doing that. But, we sat down and presented with former Defence Secretary Liam Fox and Lord Pollack as well about what they were doing, and it was really an interesting experience to go through to talk through some of these things to some high-level people in government, in Parliament at least, and to sort of set the scene. What I kind of found was that not many people really know a lot about this, and the interesting part is that ZSEX is not just the only thing the Iranians are doing. They've got an Ethereum-style financial system, ZZion, with bridges and stable coins and tokens, ERC20 style tokens, like the whole lot, and off ramps and on ramps, and obviously using Tron to do a lot of that settlement layer. And it's the what they're trying to do, I guess, is just to ensure resilience. So you can't sanction like a network, and so they're making it much harder for the US to take action, or anyone to take action against them, by building this sort of decentralized financial network.
Was it surprising to you how much of an ecosystem they built?
Yeah. And I was being a bit of a crypto nerd. I was like, this is amazing. This is really quite impressive. Yeah. Not amazing. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And Lord Pollack was like, okay, mate, calm down.
Did they get it?
Yeah, they did. I mean, they completely understood. They were very pleased that the government had taken action. I think there's more to do. Yeah. But it was a really interesting experience.
Because I can imagine, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, that Lord Pollack, I imagine, is not a young gentleman in his 20s that is trading crypto every day. Yeah. I'm judging by his name and his position that he's not. So I imagine for some of these people, do they look at this and just be like, what the hell are you talking about?
I think they were quite good in synthesizing what was important. So what the key takeaways there is that Iran is clearly active in the UK. They're clearly doing things to try and destabilize or skirt sanctions at the least. Yeah. And there are things that the UK government needs to do. So those three key things they took away. They were I was impressed actually with what, they didn't necessarily need to know technical details. That was me. That's fine. But the key takeaways they understood.
That's good.
So it was really interesting to see how that process worked, and we have some more to do on that, and some more meetings to have going forward, and we're doing some more work on these bits and pieces. But just part and parcel of what we do as a data business, really. It's great to be able to.
Yeah, it's really interesting area to be in. I would enjoy that part. Yeah. I would think that would be quite an interesting. I imagine you'd like to do some more of that sort of stuff, right? If
I think we will, yeah.
Those opportunities, the cartels in Mexico, or
there's a whole bunch.
You just won't be able to leave the UK at some point because everyone will want your head because you're telling the UK government everything about them.
I know, yeah. I have to be a bit careful. No, it's all good.
Find out where you want to go on holiday and where the wife wants to go on holiday.
Well, I mean, my clients mostly in Switzerland, Singapore, so
okay, that's
they're quite safe.
Yeah. Look, I said to you before this started, I imagine this is going to go on because I'm really fascinated about it, and I just think, you know, people listening will be as well. And I think what you're doing is such an amazing thing in this space. It is so needed, and, you know, doing it properly and not just, like you say, producing a report, see you later, producing a report, see you later. You could have very easily just gone, let's just automate this whole thing and just sit back, do nothing and let the reports fire out. But that's not, A, that's not fun, like you say, and B, you know, that's not the answer. So so thanks for coming. I just want to ask one kind of last question for you, is just, where do you see, I guess, your role within this, but also this kind of space, this source of wealth, this kind of banking piece, and where do you see this going in the next 2 to 5 years?
I think the recent market correction has made me really think about this. But you sort of question, you and I have been through a lot of ups and downs in the market, and
downs for me, to be honest.
Yeah, no. But I do think that the integration between traditional financial systems and crypto is continuing at pace. Stable coins is going to be a huge part of that. So it may not be that you know, what was used to be Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the kind of crazy volatility you used to get in digital assets is perhaps not going to be there for the long term, but certainly digital assets in one form or another, certainly stable coins, I see that as a major kind of next leg of our ecosystem in our world, and that is part of the closer integration of traditional finance and the digital world. And it's exciting to sort of be at the forefront of a lot of that and see it happening, because you are seeing crypto investors and banks coming together and sort of figuring each other out. And there's still a long way to go. So
like you say, we're in a lucky position that we've been in this space for a reasonably long time now, yet there's still so far to go. You know, we're not sat here going, well, I've kind of done everything.
I know.
There's still so far to go. We're still at kind of that day zero.
It's fun while it lasted.
Yeah, exactly. All the fun times are gone now. But no, Henry, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks a lot.
We'll obviously link things in the description, but where's the best place for people to find you if they need to?
Hoptrail.io website. It's got everything they need, including our contact details.
Amazing. Henry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.